A vast ocean stretched endlessly beneath the iron-gray sky, its surface rolling in slow, heavy swells. The massive vessel cut through the waves with effortless dominance, a fortress upon the water. Its steel hull gleamed in the dim light, and its decks were lined with towering figures. Men and women clad in layered armor, their eyes sharp, their hands ever near their weapons. This was no ordinary ship. This was a warship, an heirloom of a forgotten time, ruled by those who still carried the fire of their ancestors in their blood. The storm came not from the sea, but from above. Without warning, the sky cracked open with a sound like splintering ice. A deep, humming vibration filled the air, making the ship's iron bones tremble. The crew instinctively turned their faces skyward, and there it was, a shape unlike any known to man. A vessel of unnatural design, smooth as polished stone, dark as the abyss. It hovered above the ship, defying all laws of nature. Tendrils of violet energy crackled along its surface, illuminating grotesque etchings carved into its metallic skin. The wind howled as a brilliant, blinding light shot down from the vessel, consuming the ship in an eerie glow. Men roared in defiance, but their voices were stolen as the world dissolved around them. Havard woke to the stench of metal and something else, something bitter, acrid, and unnatural. His vision was blurred, but he could feel the hard, cold floor beneath him. His fingers curled instinctively, seeking his axe, but his weapon was gone. A deep growl rumbled in his throat as he forced himself upright, the heavy weight of his braided hair shifting against his shoulders. He was not alone. Around him, sprawled in uneasy slumber, were his kin, his warriors. It took a moment before memory returned. The ship, the attack, the enemy. Havard's eyes adjusted to the dim, pulsating light that lined the metallic walls of their prison. The air was sterile, suffocating in its artificiality. No wind, no salt, no life. Just cold precision. Then the doors slid open. They entered in near silence, their footfalls barely more than whispers against the floor. Tall, slender figures, their bodies wrapped in obsidian-colored armor that pulsed faintly with an inner light. Their faces were concealed behind smooth, featureless visors, but Havard could feel their gaze upon him, scanning, analyzing. One stepped forward, its voice slithering through the air like a breath of ice. Primitive life forms, it murmured, the words distorted, as though spoken through layers of glass. Havard did not move, nor did he speak. His people followed his lead, their silence a warning rather than submission. The alien tilted its head, as if puzzled by their lack of reaction. It gestured toward them, and suddenly, chains of blue energy sprang from the walls, wrapping around the captives. A test, a demonstration of control. Havard let it happen. He felt the crackling force tighten around his arms, forcing him to his knees. He ground his teeth, but refused to show pain. The others followed suit. Not a cry, not a whimper. Another figure, taller and draped in a regal, flowing mantle, stepped forward. Its armor gleamed with shifting patterns of light. When it spoke, the air itself seemed to vibrate. You are now the property of the Ulrathi Dominion. Your purpose shall be determined shortly. Silence. The leader turned slightly, as though losing interest. Resistance will be eliminated. Havard exhaled slowly. His muscles bunched beneath his skin. His kin saw it. They knew. The time had come. Without warning, he surged forward, breaking the energy bindings with sheer brute force. The nearest Ulrathi barely had time to react before Havard's hands closed around its throat. With a savage twist, he wrenched its helmet free, revealing a pale, elongated face, eyes black and devoid of warmth. It gasped, the sound high and keening, before Havard's fist shattered its skull against the metal wall. The chamber erupted into chaos. The warriors of the ship, once still as statues, became a storm of flesh and fury. They fought with nothing but their bare hands and stolen weapons. But it was enough. The Ulrathi had expected weak, frightened captives. They had not expected predators. A warrior grabbed an alien's arm and twisted until bones snapped like dry twigs. Another wrenched a weapon free and drove it into the chest of its owner. Sparks flew. Bodies fell. Havard did not stop. He moved with the deadly grace of a wolf, tearing through the enemy, his fists drenched in dark, foreign blood. The Ulrathi commander staggered back, disbelief evident in its rigid stance. This was impossible. This was not how things were meant to unfold. Havard met its gaze, his lips curling into something that was neither a snarl nor a smile. "You made a mistake," he said, his voice low, guttural. He reached down, picking up the fallen commander's weapon. A strange, curved blade, humming with alien energy. He turned it in his hands, testing its weight. Then he advanced. The Ulrathi turned to flee, but Havard was faster. With a single, decisive stroke, he ended it. The silence that followed was not one of peace. It was the silence of wolves standing over the fallen. Havard exhaled, scanning the room. They had won this battle, but they were still on the enemy's ship, deep in hostile territory. He turned to his warriors, their faces bloodied but unbowed. "Find a way out," he commanded, "and take everything you can." Their war was just beginning. The Ulrathi ship was a maze of cold metal and humming machinery, its corridors pulsing with dim, alien light. The air was thick with something synthetic, a sterile wrongness that gnawed at Havard's instincts. This was no place for men of the sea, no place for warriors who thrive beneath open skies. It was a prison, a tomb of steel drifting in the void. But they would not die here. Havard moved like a shadow, his warriors close behind, their breaths steady, their grips tight on stolen weapons. The ship's unnatural stillness pressed in around them. Somewhere deeper within, the enemy stirred. They knew now. They had realized their mistake. The humans they had captured were not docile livestock, not soft, frightened creatures to be studied and discarded. No, they had caged wolves, and the wolves had broken free. A faint tremor rippled through the floor, and Havard slowed. He turned a sharp gaze to his second-in-command, Eirik, who gave a slight nod. The Ulrathi were trying to herd them, pushing them toward a dead end or a kill box. Smart, but not smart enough. He tilted his head toward a narrow side passage, and his warriors followed without hesitation. They had fought together too long to need words. Every step they took was precise, calculated. The Ulrathi would expect them to move like lost prey, confused and desperate. But Havard was not lost, and he was never desperate. A sound, soft, clicking footfalls. Not human. Havard stopped. His warriors froze. The enemy was close. Then, from the shadows, the Ulrathi emerged. The first strike came fast, a pulse of blue energy crackling through the air. Havard dodged left, feeling the heat as it scorched past his ear. Before the enemy could fire again, he was already moving, closing the distance with terrifying speed. His blade, a curved, alien weapon taken from a dead commander, sang through the air and carved through the Ulrathi's armor. A shriek, wet and broken. The creature collapsed. Then all at once the battle erupted. The corridor was chaos. Flashes of energy, the metallic clang of weapons clashing, the sharp cries of the dying. The Ulrathi were taller, faster, armed with technology beyond human understanding. But the warriors of the sea had something greater. They had fury. They had instinct. They had the raw, unbreakable will of men who had spent their lives battling the elements, bending the wild to their command. Eirik fought like a storm given flesh, wielding a jagged spear torn from the ship's wreckage. Every thrust found its mark, puncturing armor, piercing deep into alien flesh. To his left, Astrid, her face streaked with blood, moved with deadly precision, twin daggers cutting through the enemy like a pair of fangs. Havard met an Ulrathi soldier head-on, catching its wrist before it could aim its weapon. The creature hissed, struggling, but he was stronger. With a sharp twist, he snapped its arm and drove his blade up beneath its jaw. Black ichor sprayed across the wall. The Ulrathi were faltering. For all their advancements, for all their arrogance, they did not understand what it meant to fight with desperation, to fight with the unrelenting fire of those who had nothing to lose. But then the air changed. A deep, resonant hum filled the corridor, vibrating through bone and blood. The remaining Ulrathi fell back, their black eyes gleaming with something strange anticipation. Then, from the far end of the passage, the walls themselves seemed to shift. A door melted away into nothing, revealing a figure unlike the others. Taller, broader. Its armor was not smooth and sleek like its kin, but layered and ridged, a jagged exoskeleton pulsing with molten lines of energy. Its gaze locked onto Havard, and for the first time, the Viking felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not hesitation, but the understanding that he had met something that might finally be his equal. The creature moved, not fast, not hurried, but with the deliberate inevitability of an avalanche. It raised a hand, and the ship itself responded, the walls glowing, shifting. The air became heavy, thick with some unseen force. Havard clenched his jaw, adjusting his grip on his blade. "Eirik," he muttered, never taking his eyes off the enemy. Eirik did not need further instruction. He understood the tone, the weight behind it. He turned to the others. "Move! Now!" "But," Astra began. "Now!" They obeyed. They did not want to, but they obeyed. Because they knew Havard, and they knew what he intended. The towering Ulrathi warrior tilted its head, as if considering him. Then, without warning, it struck. Havard barely had time to raise his weapon before the blow landed. The force sent him skidding backward, boots screeching against the smooth floor. His arm ached from the impact. He exhaled sharply, rolling his shoulders. The thing was strong, but so was he. He surged forward, ducking under the next swing, aiming for the exposed joint between its armor plates. His blade struck home, but instead of slicing through flesh, it met something dense, something that resisted. The Ulrathi's head snapped toward him, and then its other arm came around, catching him square in the ribs. Pain, dull and distant. He shoved it aside. He had felt worse. He pivoted, adjusting. The creature was armored, yes. Tough. But nothing was invincible. He feinted left, drawing its attention, then twisted right, his blade flashing. This time, he aimed lower, just above the knee. A crack. A sharp intake of alien breath. It staggered. Good. Havard pressed forward, driving his advantage. Each strike was measured, each step calculated. He forced it back, step by step, until its heel struck the threshold of the still-open door. The hum of the ship intensified. Havard glanced past the creature, and his eyes narrowed. The chamber beyond, it was different. It pulsed with energy, wires snaking from the floor to a massive central console. Understanding clicked into place. This was it, the ship's heart. The thing in front of him, it was its final defense. He bared his teeth. You should have killed me when you had the chance. With a final, brutal strike, he drove his blade deep into the creature's chest. It spasmed, its armored hands clawing at him, trying to pull him down with it. But Havard was already moving, shoving the dying beast aside and stepping into the chamber. The air pulsed. The ship groaned, sensing the intruder. Havard reached out, and then everything shifted. The chamber pulsed like a living thing, veins of molten energy coursing through its walls, the air thick with raw power. Havard could feel it vibrating in his bones, a presence both ancient and unnatural. This was the core of the Ulrathi ship, the heart of the beast that had stolen them from their waters. If he could take it, if he could break it, the battle would be won. Behind him, his warriors formed a tight perimeter, their stolen weapons raised, breath steady despite the weight of exhaustion pressing on their limbs. They had fought through endless corridors, spilled alien blood in rivers, torn through the Ulrathi's ranks like wolves among sheep. But the fight was not over. Not yet. A tremor ran through the floor, followed by a low, rhythmic thrum, deep, insidious, like a heartbeat of something vast and watching. Havard turned his gaze upward, and his grip on his blade tightened. The chamber was awakening. From the high, arching ceiling, tendrils of metallic fiber began to unravel, shifting and coiling like serpents. Lights flickered erratically. The walls rippled as though the ship itself was reacting to their presence, rejecting them. Then the doors slammed shut, A wall of shimmering blue light sealed the exit, trapping them inside. The warriors tensed, but Havard did not falter. He had expected this. The Ulrathi were desperate now, and desperate enemies made mistakes. At the center of the room, a massive construct loomed. Half machine, half something else, something that pulsed with alien life. It rose from the floor like a monolith, its surface shifting, revealing layers of glowing runes and etched symbols. It was the ship's mind, its command center, its last defense. And it was not unguarded. From the far end of the chamber, figures emerged. Tall, clad in thick, jagged armor, their forms almost skeletal in structure. They were unlike the Ulrathi they had faced before. These were not mere soldiers, not mindless enforcers. These were war priests, protectors of their technology, bound to the ship like parasites clinging to a host. They moved without hurry, as if assured of their victory. In their clawed hands, they wielded blades of shifting energy, each strike humming with deadly purpose. Havard exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "We finished this," he growled. Then the battle began. The Ulrathi priests struck first. They moved in unison, their blades slicing through the air with unnatural precision. One lunged for Havard, its weapon carving a searing arc toward his throat. He ducked, feeling the heat kiss his skin, and countered with a brutal upward slash. His stolen blade met resistance, scraping against the alien's armor, but he pressed forward, driving his shoulder into its chest, sending it stumbling. Around him, his warriors fought with a fury honed through years of hardship. Eirik met an opponent head-on, his spear catching the alien under its ribs, twisting deep before ripping free in a spray of dark ichor. Astrid, her twin daggers flashing like fangs, wove through the chaos, cutting tendons, slicing throats, moving with the deadly grace of a predator. But the Ulrathi fought as if they did not fear death. One of them, faster than the others, seized a warrior by the throat, lifting him effortlessly before driving a blade through his chest. The man gasped, his body convulsing before falling limp. A flicker of rage ignited in Havard's chest, but he buried it. Grief was for later. Now was for killing. He turned, locking eyes with the central construct, the pulsing core of the ship. That was the true enemy. The rest were just obstacles. A plan formed. Havard roared, drawing the attention of the remaining Ulrathi. He held his blade steady, posture defiant. "You want me?" he snarled. "Come and take me." The war priests did not hesitate. They surged toward him, abandoning the others, their dark eyes focused only on the greatest threat. It was what he wanted. Behind them, unseen, Eirik moved. While Havard held the enemy's gaze, his second-in-command was already in motion, darting toward the console, reaching for the core. The ship trembled, as if sensing the betrayal, its defenses shifting, but it was too late. Eirik plunged his stolen spear deep into the pulsing construct. A sound filled the air, not a scream, not a mechanical shriek, but something deeper, something ancient and angry. The ship convulsed, its walls twisting, its power faltering. The blue barrier sealing the exit flickered. Havard wasted no time. He lunged at the distracted war priests, his blade cleaving through weakened defenses, his warriors following, cutting down the last of the Ulrathi guardians with swift, merciless precision. Then the lights began to fail. The floor buckled. The walls trembled. The ship was dying. Havard turned, locking eyes with Eirik. His friend nodded once. "It's done." But there was no time for victory. The vessel was collapsing. The core, now ruptured, sent shockwaves rippling through its body. Sparks erupted from the ceiling, vents spewing acrid smoke. The once smooth corridors twisted, shifting like wounded limbs. They had to move. "Run!" Havard bellowed. They did. They sprinted through the ship's disintegrating halls, leaping over fallen debris, dodging bursts of steam and fire. The vessel roared around them, its death throes violent and chaotic. And then light. A breach. An opening. Ahead, the vast, endless ocean stretched beneath them, dark and wild. Their ship, their real ship, still floated on the waters below, battered but waiting. Havard did not slow. With a final push, they leaped. The cold embrace of the sea swallowed them whole, the force of impact stealing their breath. But they surfaced, gasping, alive. Above, the alien vessel, once an untouchable predator, shuddered, its massive form sinking, drawn into the depths. Its glowing lights flickered, dimming, vanishing. Silence. Then cheers. His warriors raised their fists, their voices carrying over the waves. They had won. They had defied the gods of the stars and made them bleed. Havard treaded water, watching the last remnants of the Ulrathi ship disappear beneath the surface. He exhaled, tilting his head toward the sky, where the stars shimmered, distant and cold. This was only the beginning. They had faced the unknown and survived. And if more came, if others like the Ulrathi sought to take them, they would be ready,